Hello and welcome to a fresh episode of Platypod Perspectives, where every single time we get to see a gorgeous image like this one. This is just truly amazing to me, and I'm so looking forward to talking to the artist who created this gorgeous image, and her name is Rain Hayes. Hey, Rain, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great, Larry. How are you?
Wonderful, and I really do appreciate your taking the time to talk with us today about this gorgeous image, and it's one of many in a very similar style. And I absolutely love this image. And I want to dig into this because I know a lot of photographers, this looks kind of almost supernatural. And a lot of photographers are going to go, how the heck did you do that? So with that in mind, I know that this is ultraviolet photography, and you're an artist who does ultraviolet and infrared. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this image just a little bit and tell us, what did you do to capture this?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you and to share this really odd and interesting type of photography that I love. All of that this photo is a flower in a dark room under a UV light source. And I've used a macro lens and a focus stacking technique to capture the depth in focus. And there's not much more to it than that. It's actually a very simple technique. If you or anyone else has watched my infrared courses on Kelby One or seen my infrared work, you know that that technique involves some special equipment and filters and converted cameras. You don't need any of that to do UV. You just need a little UV flashlight in a dark room, and you're pretty much good to go.
So you just did this without any camera modifications and you
That's
captured
right.
that image. Okay, it's all
That's
about the
right.
light. Okay, so talk
It's
a
all
little.
about the light,
Okay,
and
where
and
can
it's
you get one of those?
you can get one on Amazon. What you want to look for is a 365 nanometer flashlight with a nice Nikia LED. That's a high quality LED that is pretty accurate. You don't want to get any other frequency than 365 nanometers. You'll see 395 and others being sold, but you really want this 365. And all this is really is a black light like you would have at the club or at a party. It's the thing that makes your white t-shirt glow. And the reason that it works well for these images is because a lot of plants actually glow under UV light. Not all, but this technique is called, and this is a mouthful, ultraviolet induced visible fluorescence, or UVIVF. We sometimes just shortcut it and call it UV, but it's not quite accurate. We're going to call it UVIVF. And it's just your black party light and a flower and you in a dark room.
Okay, so I've seen your blog post and some of your Kelby, your work in your Kelby class, and I've seen your blog post on the Platypod blog. So I know a little bit about the behind the scenes setup and where it is. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do use the Platypod gear because it helps with these really tiny subjects in doing macro photography to be able to position things very precisely. I love the goosenecks and the elbows, and I use a Platypod Extreme to kind of rig up a couple of the clamps to hold my lights. And then I use the ball head for holding my camera. And what I like about these tools is that they are very easy to reposition, and it allows me to reposition the subject itself very precisely rather than constantly fiddling with my tripod to get it at exactly the right height. I can just clamp the flower in one of the Platypod clamps and make those minute adjustments as I need to. So it's very easy and flexible, and kind of gives me some extra creative latitude to, make new and interesting images quickly.
So this didn't require any special filters. It does require a very specific special light. And
Yeah.
then your setup is in an otherwise completely dark room. In other words, you don't have any spillage of light coming from an outside window or something like that. How did you set all that up?
So, as you can see in my house here, I have a lot of light, and it's very hard to shut the light out. I'm just in the laser beam all day. So, I use one of my bathrooms, which doesn't have any windows, and that creates a really dark environment. If you have light spillage, you're going to get a different type of photograph that may still be interesting, but it's not what I'm after. You'll get a reduced glow from the UV light. So as dark as you can make that room, the better off you'll be. My bathroom is ideal because it's dark, the counters are fairly high, and it's a pretty contained and dust-free environment. One thing you should know if you try UV is that the thing that glows brightest in all the world is dust. So if you can be in an environment that doesn't have any fabrics or other things that create dust, you're going to do a lot better.
That sounds great. And it sounds like, okay, I'm going to set up right after I take my shower. All the steam was in the room and it kills that dust. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about the capture itself. Do you have
Okay.
to use a certain kind of camera? In other words, have you ever tried this with a smartphone camera? Will it work? Does it have the dynamic range to be able to pull this off?
I'm still experimenting with the camera. I really want it to work, but I'm using a long exposure for these images, and the camera does not quite the phone camera doesn't capture it quite as well as my Canon R5 with the 100 millimeter macro lens. The other thing I'm doing with these images is focus stacking. So my camera and most cameras have a setting that allow you to take a series of images at progressive depths so that you can then take that whole series of images and use post-processing software like Photoshop or Helicon Focus to combine all of those images into one that is sharp from front to back. That's not a capability that you have on the phone, but it's worth experimenting because if there's one thing that I've learned in photography or life in general is that what I find impossible or difficult, someone else is going to come along and figure out a way to do it. So I don't want to tell anyone that it won't work. I just haven't explored it quite enough to make it work for me yet.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I am used to, now years and years ago, focus stacking meant you had to mount your camera on a macro rail system. And now it's in the cameras. And that's just such a great advantage that we have these days is that change in focus stacking and being able to pull that off. It's actually really cool. Now, you also do beyond ultraviolet, you do infrared photography on a level I have never seen before. And I follow a lot of famous photographers, and you do some amazing work. How did you get into that side of things? You seem to just be exploring the light that none of us can see with our naked eye.
Well, it's true. I do like that light, although that wasn't specifically what I was after. But we have the visible spectrum of color that we can see. And then on either side of that, we've got UV and infrared. So it's just outside of what we can see, but we can use our cameras to record that light and translate it into something that's visible to humans. I got into infrared about 7 years ago when I saw an image online and it was confusing. Everything seemed to be glowing and it was kind of a duotone, dark blue and white. All of the foliage, all of the grass was white. And I looked into how I could try my hand at this technique. So I got a Hoya R72 infrared filter for my camera and I went out and started taking images. And I was so taken with it that I got my camera converted so that I wouldn't need to use a filter anymore. And I have found that it's very addictive to walk around in the world looking through the viewfinder at the world kind of glowing in this way. And it just never seems to get old for me. when I try to take images in color now, it's pretty difficult. It feels kind of flat and boring. I think, when you're a kid, Larry, and it's not that you think that Spider-Man is real or that superpowers are real or unicorns, but you're also kind of open to the idea, like if a spider wanted to bite you, you might let it because you're just not sure. I feel like I've never really lost that openness for things being a little strange or maybe finding a hidden door or a superpower somewhere. And that's what the infrared and the UV do for me, is they kind of provide a visual representation of that openness to something being a little bit extra or a little bit magical in the ordinary world.
Well, Rain, I definitely believe that the artwork that I've seen from you is magical. How can people find out a little bit more about you, follow your work, learn from you, things like that? Do you do workshops or anything?
I have a class streaming on infrared photography on kelby1.com. You can also find my work and other learning resources on my website, rainhayes.com. You can buy prints. You can download a free infrared quick start guide, and you can check my blog for whatever new things I happen to be working on.
Rain, thank you so much for joining us. I can't tell you, I have learned so much, but I really enjoy looking at your work and your website. So thank you so much for joining us on Platypod Perspectives today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a ton of fun.
Folks, this is why we do Platypod Perspectives, to give you the opportunity to see amazing images like this. And if this is the kind of thing that's interesting to you, you should like and subscribe so that you never miss out on an episode of Platypod Perspectives, because you never know what you're going to learn next time.